Hello there, my name is Jules. Welcome to I Like Me, a channel dedicated to exploring and discussing healing modalities that really work for transformation, change, healing. And today I have with me a beautiful colleague called Gordon Smith-Duran. Hello, Gordon, how are you?
Hello, Jules. I'm very well. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Very well indeed. So we met a couple of years ago and sort of off the back of last year, I came across, you sprang out at me. I don't even remember how, but in one of the messaging groups that I'm involved in on Telegram. And you were kind of advertising some of your works around, helping to support people who were interested in hypnosis and wanting to go a bit deeper into their own journey, plus also train in that area. And something about you just spoke to me quite deeply, and you leapt out of the group, and I just thought, oh, maybe I'm supposed to be doing that for a bit. So we kind of connected, and the journey that I went on with you was really quite beautiful because I'd studied psychology, sort of 25, 26 years. I've got my degree in psychology, and I worked in a private psychiatric hospital for some time. But I was always fascinated with the psyche. What is it that creates behavior? What is it? Why is it that this person can do this and they're ending up in this setting? Yet I see other people on the street and, they're not in these kind of settings. And I was always fascinated with this line that we walk on that either deems us mad or not mad. And I started to understand within myself what it is that creates these behaviors. Why does human behavior, why do we do what we do? And I sort of had to put it on the shelf for a little while. I, developed a family and whatnot. But when I responded to your post, it reopened this spark, this love of the psyche, this love of trying to understand the mind, which I still have to this day. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
But before we kind of move on to some of the things that you're involved in, I would love to hear your perspective on, the mind-body connection, what that means to you and how you may or may not feel that they're intrinsically linked and the effects of both on each other in your experience.
Sure, yeah. Um, that, for me, the mind-body connection is the strongest connection that exists, and everything. It's like two worlds that reflect one another completely, in my opinion. So if you're in a great place in your mind, generally the body follows. And also if you're in a good place with your body, often the mind follows too, If I were going to put a priority, mind first, body second, tends to be the case. But really if you can get to a place in your life, I believe, where you've got both really flying in formation, then your life completely changes. And I'm talking about illness, not just, physical illness leads to mental illness, and mental illness leads to physical illness. If you're out of balance, you're out of balance. And the whole, and I would add into that the mind, body, and the emotional body as well. And it's our job, I think, our job to spend our life working to find balance in all of those. And once we've got them, maintain it, because it isn't a one-time thing. It's constant work of keeping yourself balanced. So yeah, it's vital, absolutely vital. It's a number one for everyone who wants to be in a better place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Because life does have the capacity to give us many different situations that can knock us off balance. And, they're not isolated incidents. They happen through developmental phases from birth and beyond. So I feel like the more tools we have in our kit, really, the better we can navigate these circumstances. Not always with ease and grace, sometimes with ease and grace, sometimes with absolute chaos, but the more tools we have, the more we can just go, right, okay, what is it that I can actually do here for myself that's going to bring that homeostasis, that balance, that equilibrium that you speak of? So yeah, wonderful, wonderful. Thank you. Subconscious versus conscious mind. For those that are just coming to this understanding that there are two parts of our brain, What would you, how would you describe the subconscious, and how would you describe the conscious mind in terms of helping people understand the differences?
Okay, so if we're going to talk in a kind of a general way, there's a one sort of school of thought that says that the conscious mind can manage 7 plus or minus 2 things. What does that mean? That we can only focus our conscious mind on either 5, maximum 9 things. As soon as we have more stimulus than our conscious mind can cope with, then the unconscious mind has to do the rest. Yeah. Hence the fact that you'll find if you're stressed, if you've got something that you're concerned about that's coming up or whatever, and your mind's focused on that, there's very little else that you can do. You become not very efficient. So people who live in high stress, often their lives are a mess because they just can't focus on it. The conscious mind can't focus on it. So you've got this very limited, the conscious mind, although it's the driver, the conscious mind is the captain of the ship. And that's fine. We set the wheel. The unconscious mind is everything else. It's the ship, it's the motor, it's the everything. And so the job of our conscious mind, if I understand it rightly, is that our conscious mind sets a sail and the unconscious mind makes sure that we get there. Therefore, the unconscious mind, and this is a very common metaphor. It's like an iceberg. The conscious mind is what you see above the water, and the unconscious mind is everything else. But even that, I don't think does it justice. The unconscious mind is so big, and it controls everything. People talk about if you want to make change, you just need willpower. Not really. Willpower is very short term, and you'll find that if you try and do something just with willpower, you might manage 2 days, 3 days, and then the unconscious mind will take over. So the unconscious mind is in charge of everything that's happening, but it's also in charge of all of your habits. And it will make sure that if you've set the sail for these habits, it will continue them going, no matter how much you try to fight against it. And so the job of us is to understand how we can reprogram the unconscious mind, because it's like a server, it's like a workhorse. And if you set it in the wrong direction, then the good news is that if you've done it, you can undo it and you can do something else. So it's kind of like we are not in control of our day-to-day, of our everything, our behaviors, everything, once they're set, but we can change them. So the conscious mind, our job is to have the tools, as you said, have the tools to know how the dickens we change what we're doing. If it's not what we like, if it's what we like, fantastic. So that's the unconscious mind is the most honest part of us. It's honesty personified. And so it will always do what it perceives to be the right thing, even if that is punishing you for not being honest. It's very, very honest. And I know I'm kind of slipping off into a little rivulet here, but if the unconscious mind perceives you to be dishonest in what you're doing, or not following your path, or not being true to yourself, it will punish you. And how it does it, in many, many ways. There's lots of ways, but generally it will take away your happiness. So you can't be happy in what you're doing because it's saying, well, this isn't the right thing to do. So when you find yourself truly happy, it's a signal that your unconscious mind is very happy with where you are and what you're doing. Yeah? So that's a kind of a general overview.
What a great answer. Yeah. And I think we mentioned this with a friend the other day, about following your joy, because that is like indicative of saying, am I doing the right thing for me? Like, does it make me happy? Does it light me up? And it's so, so vital. And I just want to touch on something you said there about, the habits in the subconscious mind and the unconscious mind, because quite often this is why I found in my experience that people sometimes struggle to make those long lasting changes because there's still something ingrained, habitual, that's been, going round and round in circles or playing out in our unconscious mind. Which kind of leads a bit nicely into the hypnosis sessions themselves, because, I know that from my own experience, and obviously what I do and with the work that you do, it is all about just getting into that space, that brainwave space, to be able to access memories or experience or limited thinking, conditioning, ingrained behaviors, to understand why is it there? Mm-hmm. Where did it come from? And we have to be willing to kind of look at our stuff really in order to understand that and go into that nature of inquiry, to understand and then resolve it and say, okay, well that was okay for then, but actually it's not now. It's got to work its way out, and I have to release this from my system. So is there any examples of people that you've worked with that have been really deeply profound or really made you go, wow, like, hypnotherapy has really shown this person, what they can do, and their lives have changed quite dramatically? I know that there are, many modalities to use side by side. Sometimes it's not a one-stop shop, one fixes all. But in your experience, have you got any things that you can mention about sessions you've had where people have made these changes and the effect of them?
Sure, yeah. So you could put the therapy, the one that I offer, into two camps. So we've got quick fix. Yeah, I'm smoking. I'm not going to put eating into the quick fix, because that is, and I'm talking about overeating, but smoking, habits, fear of flying, stuff like that. Yeah, phobias. They're things that can be fixed quite quickly because they're learned quite quickly. Learning to be fearful of flying is quite a fast thing you can do. Learning to be scared of a spider, you learn very, very quickly. But then we've got the more terminal problem, but the long-term, deep-seated problems. So I've worked with people. I remember working with a guy who was scared of flying, and we were doing a process, and there are various things you do. Basically, the bottom line is if somebody has a phobia, what you've got to do is you've got to mess that up for them. Because what happens is with all of us is that we go through the same process. To manifest a problem, we go through the same process every single time. We have a route. And let's say, for example, it might be we see something, we say something to ourselves, we remember a time when this happened, and then we feel very, very scared. So that's a route that we never do anything else. So it's like, it becomes so ingrained. Imagine it's like a little program that we write, and it goes A, B, C, D, run like hell. Yeah. And so what our job as therapists is to go in and change the letters around. And so it goes C, B, E, D. And then if you mess up the pattern, the person can't access the run like hell bit. And so I was working with a guy who was fearful. And I remember I did some really bizarre things with him, imagining, you just get them to imagine things, and then you mess it up and you do stupid things. The more crazy you can get the imagery inside of the mind, the better. And he was sitting there, and at the beginning he was going, I'm just so scared, and I've got a flight coming up, I've got to go with work, and he was really stressed, and we were doing these things, And he went, what have you done? What have you done? It's gone. It's gone. And I actually hadn't done the process that I'd intended to do. We were just chatting, but I was layering in I was just messing these letters up. And he knew in that instant that he was fixed. And he said, that's it. And I said, well, we've still got an hour to go. We'd only been doing 30 minutes. I said, we'll do some extra stuff. He said, if you want to, but it's done. Yeah. So it gives you a tremendously good feeling when that happens. So that's the quick fix. The other side of it is the people who really have been traumatized, and there's a lot of deep-seated programs that they've written that need to be adjusted. And so that's a longer term, it's a longer term project if they're willing to put that work in. And you were talking about you've got to be willing to look at your stuff. But for me, you know, the quick fixes are great. But when I've worked with somebody, let's say off and on over a year, 2 years, I've got some clients I've been working with for 4 years. But to see where they were, and then to see where they are now, and the changes they've made, and the strength that they've got, and the dynamism, and the kind of the goals that they're setting, and the way, you know, at the beginning, I'll give you one example. I worked with a lovely lady. I'm still working with her now. When I met her, she would only show me one face. This facade that she would show me, it was rock solid. It was there to protect her. And I never felt that I met the person. And then fast forward to, you know, like 2 years later, suddenly in one session, suddenly I met the person. She felt strong enough to be able to drop all of those facades and just talk like a normal person. Mm. And it was like, wow. I said, wow, I've never met you before. This is lovely. Nice to meet you, you know? And now she's in a place where, because what happens, Joules, and I'm sorry that I'm making this a long answer, but what happens is that at the beginning, the work is getting rid of the old programs and replacing them with better ones. Better ones for the person, obviously not my perspective, what they want. Mm-hmm. But then once that heavy work is done, it's like, you know, setting the foundation, digging up all the old foundations, putting new ones in. Then the next job is for them to start to build their life, to build their building of what they want. And it's just such a beautiful process to watch. And then there's a point where they get to when they say, I'm not going to have any more sessions because I think I know what I've got to do now. And for me, that is the biggest compliment that I can get as a therapist. When somebody says, I don't need you anymore. Mm-hmm. Get in. It's sad. Sometimes I'm sad. Oh, sad. But even then those people become friends. You know,
I know, yeah.
And it's just, I mean, such a beautiful process. So yeah, I've seen that often. You know, does it mean that every person I've worked with I've been able to help and they've changed? No, not always, because the person's there's a big responsibility with being a client. There's a big, you know, I have a responsibility, but they do too. They've got to do the work, and so as long as they do the work and they make those changes, then everything goes beautifully well.
Yeah, I fully agree, because, you know, sometimes we can take ourselves on retreats and things like that and feel the most fantastic that we've ever felt, but then we kind of land back in our daily lives and we're trying to bring the energy of that retreat with us. But, you know, we have to, it's the integration of those spaces and it's the ongoing day-to-day things that make the biggest shifts. So, you know, it's not about just thinking, oh, well, I went to this place and that's it, I'm done. It's like, no, actually, are you owning it? Are you embodying it every step of the way? Like, yeah. Has your family life changed? Has your life changed? You know, what is it that you've brought from that space that you can keep, you know, it's like you get the spark maybe relit, but then it's like fueling the fire to keep going, you know, keep going. And I see that quite a lot in some of the circles I move in, that people just keep going on retreat. It's like, well, if you made the changes that you were aware of, then you probably wouldn't need to go and keep going back. I mean, I also work with somebody for a period of time. And when I first met her, she just had this like heaviness cloud around her. And we did like an alternate past life experience, and you could just see that when after the session she just was like, I understand quite a lot of stuff now. And her, you know, her business had been put on hold for a year. She'd spent a lot of time building this business up, and it was quite a popular business, quite, you know, very well established, but she had to just park it all. And after that session she was like, I think I can go back to work again now. So and it's just, as you say, just to see each time we meet, the progress and the light and the shiningness that's returned to her, you know, their being as they go. And it's just really beautiful, isn't it? It's just so like rewarding to be a part of that. And yeah. You do, like in sessions, you kind of go on a bit of a journey with people, you know, You know, I know that there's been a couple where I've been like, oh no, don't, you're not supposed to cry here.
Oh
You
yeah.
you just get so touched by what they've gone through, or you know, the fact that you know that something has shifted within them and they have rediscovered something within themselves. You know, it can't help but just bring a little tear to the eye. So
For
yeah.
sure, yeah. Yeah, and just adding to something that you said about this journey that we go through, what I'm aware of is that as we work with people, our role changes. At the beginning, I'm very much the therapist, and I'm going to take you and I'm going to get you to look at things that you don't want to look at, and there's going to be tears, and it's going to be hard. And then as time moves on, the role changes, and in the end, what I become is like a spiritual life coach. That's kind of where I see myself in the end, a spiritual life coach. And I add the word spiritual because there isn't, to me, therapy can't exclude spirituality. You know, the journey that I see people go on is coming out of this very, very dark place of very 3D, if we want to use that expression, but like very much in the moment, in life shit. And then suddenly they go on this journey within, and the journey within always takes them to spirituality, whatever that means for them. But they just become bigger, more dimensional, multi-dimensional people, which is beautiful.
Yeah, it's like they open up to something, as I say, there's many names. I don't have a particular denomination, but opening up to something which is bigger than themselves, to understand their place on the planet, and, you know, how connected we all are. It's really, really beautiful. So, talking of clients then, you know, what is the impact of, you know, unresolved issues? What is the impact of unresolved issues within us, in your experience? How does that impact us, you know?
Okay. So my take, and, you know, this is just a framework that I use. It isn't necessarily true, but it works for me. So I use it, which is that let's say the first 7 years of our life are fundamental in how we are during the rest of our lives. They mark us, and they mark us because what happens is the programs that we use to run our life are written in those years. So what happens is that if you have 7 beautiful years, the first 7 years, then you fly through life. You fly. In studies, it's been found that 90%, and I would say probably pushing a bit higher than that, 90% of us didn't have 7 beautiful years. And so the majority of us are running, let's say, if we use it as a metaphor, running programs that are not useful. And they're programs of self-blame, low self-worth, low self-love, everything, you know, fill in the gap. What happens is once those programs are written, there's nothing that you can do. You can't erase them. I suppose that's the key. You can't erase them. The only thing that you can do is overwrite them with a better one. If you don't overwrite them, then you are stuck with those programs for the rest of your life. How do the programs manifest themselves? It's easy. You decided that you weren't worth love in the first 7 years of your life because you didn't get the love from your parents that you thought that you needed. What happens is every time that you come into a place where you might be getting love from somebody, you do something to sabotage it because you don't deserve it. You don't feel that you're a good person for whatever reason. Every time that you are in a place where it appears that you might be a good person, you will do something to ruin it. You know, and I believe that a tremendous amount of relationships that break down not because they're incompatible. They break down because there are too many programs running that, you know, if it gets too good, we've got to mess this up. This is too good. I don't deserve this. You know, so the issues that we have, if we don't resolve them, they just repeat and repeat and repeat. And you know, on a more spiritual level, these are lessons. You know, if some people say that we come down and we choose to have this kind of trauma as a child, so that then our job is in the rest of our life to resolve it. Mm-hmm. If we don't resolve it, it will repeat and repeat and repeat ad infinitum. And so that's how the manifestation is. You just ask yourself the question, am I happy with the way that my life's going? Am I happy with the way my relationships are going? Am I happy in my work? Am I happy in myself? If the answer is yes, crack on. If the answer is no, then you have some programs that need to be overridden. I mean, in its simplest term, I think that's how I would describe it.
Yeah, perfect. And that's why some people will say, oh, I always attract this type of person, or I always have this always happens to me, you know. And it's like, okay, well, this is happening to you. Let's look at this. What is it that's going on inside that's bringing this in? Why are we on this hamster cage? You're going round and round and round. Is it not time to stop?
Absolutely. You know? Yeah, I mean, that's a sign, and you've nailed it, Joules. When bad stuff repeatedly happens to you, this always happens to me. You know, when people, and unfortunately we trap ourselves in our own paradigm. This always happens to me is a very powerful affirmation. Absolutely. That will guarantee that it will always happen to you. And so that's all you have to look at your life and say, do I keep choosing the wrong partner? Goodness knows how many people do that. I keep choosing the wrong partner. I keep choosing an abusive partner. I'm just a bad picker. No, you're a good picker. You pick exactly the person that you've got the program set up to pick. I don't deserve this, so I'm going to pick this person to make sure that I don't get it.
Further perpetuate the belief that I don't deserve it.
Absolutely.
Because often also I find, speaking to people, that we, you know, unless we're aware of it, we're attracting in the characters from our childhood. So the father dynamic, the mother dynamic, the sister, brother, the auntie, the uncle dynamic, because it's familiar to us. We grew up in that environment, therefore it feels safe, actually. But if it didn't serve us then for our growth, what's to say that it's going to serve us now? Like, it never did. Which is why people can get unhappy. So it's you know being aware of that. And I think one of the key factors is really, because I was just going to ask you about top tips for sort of starting to understand someone's journey, and that's one of the things that's just come, is to start asking yourself. You already mentioned, am I happy in my work, in my relationship, in my life? And you know, but also to say, what am I attracting in repeatedly? What is being shown to me on a loop? Why is this, you know, some people say, oh, it's just my luck. Why is it just your luck? You know, why? What is it about your energy that's creating that? And I feel you're right. You know, energy and programs, as you put them, energy cannot be destroyed, but it can be changed, can't it? It can be shifted, transmuted, whatever the word that people want to use. So I do truly believe that we all have that capacity to heal, every single one of us, if we're willing and able to start, because it is a journey. It's not like a okay, well, I'm just going to do this and everything's good. I mean, it might be in some cases. I'm just going to do this one thing and everything is fixed, but quite often we're still you know, subjected to many of life's circumstances, and our survival patterns from childhood can impact, you know, how we show up in life. I know from my own psyche that was the case, you know. And that was another reason why I just thought, I'm going in to find out what's there. So I started to learn a little bit about self-hypnosis and what I could do to just be in that space and make the inquiry, which is something I feel to share, actually, because it's quite important. So I think you mentioned about this technique of listening to three things, listening to, feeling three things, seeing three things with the eyes closed. And it's a really profound way of starting to come into a space of stillness. I was just discussing this yesterday. And then from there, the space inside of us is more open and obvious. We're more aware of that space. And sometimes what I do is just pose a question in that space. Like, right, this is happening, or I'm feeling this way about this. Why is that? And just sit and wait for the answer. It's the subconscious mind wants to show you these things. It's, as you know, it's got our highest healing in support, really.
Sure.
So that's one of the ways that I kind of delve into my own psyche. Do you have any tips on how to, look at your own subconscious, unconscious mind? Do you have any ways or methods that you could share?
Okay, well, I think the most important, the biggest block that we have to ever resolving any problems is being scared to admit that we don't. Okay, that what I've discovered is that as soon as somebody admits that they've got a problem that needs fixing, that's the most difficult step done. Yeah? Most people are in denial. Most people are in denial because you mentioned this. It's comfortable where they are. They're comfortable in their discomfort.
Well, it's all they know.
That's right.
It's all they know.
But they also believe in many ways that that's what they deserve as well. That's all there is. There's an expression here in Spain, and it's lo que hay. It's what there is. And people use that to describe really shit times. And they just go, well, it's what there is. That's all that there is. So the first step for everybody is by using those questions about looking at your happiness and asking yourself, for example, am I being the best version of myself right now? And how you measure that is, am I being true to myself? Because sadness comes from lack of truth, lack of honesty. As we said, the unconscious mind is an honest part of us. And so when we're lying to ourselves, when we're fooling ourselves, when we're denying things, we're not happy. We're not allowed to be happy. So first job, face yourself, look at the monster, and admit that there's a monster there, However, once you've done that, the story is that in dreams, when you're being chased by a monster, you mustn't run away from it because the monster's your shadow. And so no matter how fast you run, the monster's always behind you because it's part of you. And so the idea is that when you stop, turn around, face the monster, throw your arms around it and give it a big hug, it transforms into an angel. Yeah. And that's true. It's true because I've done it in dreams. But that transformation isn't always overnight. So the tip that I would say is, right. So I was having a conversation about this the other day. Now I'm going to get into something. What I see, the folly that I see at the moment, because we're moving into a very, very spiritual time, people are getting very much in touch with the spirituality, and it's such a beautiful thing. But if you imagine the journey of therapy is this, right? So you're not in a good place, and then you start improving yourself, rewriting programs, and then the journey within, and then spirituality. Okay? What I'm saying is that lots of people, because of what's available, they're jumping over the first bit. And they're just jumping into spirituality. And, they're becoming they want to become the Buddha, but they haven't sorted out the foundations. And so my advice...
There's a term for that, isn't it? It's called bypassing or yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Well, that would describe it exactly. It's like, the parable of if you build your house on sand, it's going to collapse. And if you build your spirituality without the foundation, it'll collapse. You'll be disappointed. And so what we've got to do is the first job is to sort out the stuff, sort out the shit, to use that expression. And then once that's done, then really, focus on your spirituality. Does that mean you've got to ignore spirituality? No, not at all. Go to your retreats and do all that, find out about what really lights your fire. But at the same time, work on the stuff that's important first. Get yourself in, or get your house in order. And then do that. So how do you do that? You can do it any way. But what I would say is, don't, if you've got these really bad problems in your life, don't just say, well, I want to go and talk to my higher self and get everything resolved. I've done that. I've had lots and lots of clients that have come and said, I just want to talk to my higher self. Beautiful. And they talk to the higher self and they go, hey, that was lovely. But just like you were saying, it's like going to a retreat and then coming away from it. And you've got the buzz, but then what are you going to do with that? You know, and the higher self work, the messages that you get, you've got to be in a spiritual place to understand those messages. Because the higher self's not going to say, well, what you have to do is rewrite that program, rewrite it. It doesn't. It's you know, it's much more kind of on a lovely spiritual level. So that's my top tip would be, do the work first. Find a therapist that can help you to resolve the issues from before. It's like if you want to clear your path, you've got to clear the path from before.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And I think, you know, one of the things that I took away as well from working with you is, you know, the fact that all emotions are valid. So, you know, but we're not necessarily encouraged to vocalize or express those emotions as we're growing up for various reasons, either from parenting or, you know, conditioning from various learning environments that we're in, or, you know, we're trying to be a specific way. And there's a lot of suppression that happens in those scenarios. So then to sort of to really undo the valve of that pressure cooker, it can feel a bit to begin with, you know, because everything's just coming out. But actually in those spaces, if you can really just sit with it and just go, well, this is how I'm feeling right now. And I'm really, you know, effed off at the world and blah, it's okay. You know, it's okay. We have a spectrum of emotions. There's no reason why we need to limit our experience to just 3 or 4 because we feel that we need to be, you know, that's the person that we have to be. No, actually, as a human being, hue in terms of color is the whole range, right? So it's like experiencing the whole of the spectrum of emotions is actually giving authenticity to our expression and how we feel. You know, we're not robots, right? We're not soldiers or any of that. We are here to feel. And from that comes a byproduct of creativity that can really transform your inner landscape, really.
Absolutely.
It's like being your own best friend. You know, if I was sitting next to you and you were going through things, I wouldn't be like, right, stop that shit. Stop talking about that and moaning about it. You know, we'd be talking about it and I'd be saying, what's happening? How are you feeling about that? What's going on? You know, so it's being our own best friend as well, I think is really key.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you know, what I find interesting, I've been probably offering therapy for 15 years. And in that time, I could count on 2 hands the amount of men that I've worked with. Why? Because exactly what you said, to actually make the change, you've got to face these emotions. And what emotions are they? Well, the base is fear, you know, fear, sadness, disappointment. Men aren't told to show fear. No fear. Yeah. Boys don't cry. And so I think that's why women tend to be able to express emotion much more than men. That doesn't mean that I mean, I've had men who've been weeping and weeping and weeping, and I think, thank God for that. Well done that you've been able to let that go. Because every emotion has a job to do. Every emotion has a job to do. But, you know, and I know it's a cliche, but energy and motion, emotions are never static. They're constantly moving. And so the idea of an emotion is if we feel fear, the idea is that we express it. We let it out. And of course, we're taught not to. And especially if you're from the UK, you know, keep that to yourself, you know.
Don't scare anybody else with your fear.
Yeah. Too much information. And so what happens is rather than expressing these what we would call heavy base emotions, we swallow them down. And all they do is they just eat us up inside. And so lots of men, unfortunately, although they've got all of these negative emotions, you know, they're scared to show them because then they become so big. I mean, it's a monster. You know,
Mm-hmm.
if I let out this
Mm.
emotion, I don't even know where it would take me, and I don't know what I would be capable of doing. You know, and I can resonate with that because I had a father who was very abusive, and so I made lots of programs about fear. I was very fearful, and of course, as a man, you're not really supposed to be fearful. You're supposed to be strong and everything. So although I repressed that, it was there in everything that I was scared of everything. I still did it, but I felt very scared. Once I was able to release that, all that happens is you just become less fearful, braver. You know, once you let go of these emotions that are holding you back, it makes you a much stronger person. It doesn't make you weaker. It doesn't, you're not weaker because you've cried your eyes out for half an hour with your therapist. You are so much stronger.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so my call would be to the men. You know, women have got this licked. Men, come and sort yourselves out. Let it go, baby. It's not that bad. You'll be stronger afterwards.
For sure, for sure, for sure. And lighter. And just, you know, you'd move differently. You know, you'd move differently because if a friend of mine is just sort of about to embark on a pilgrimage, and I've got another friend that's already doing one, and I mentioned this to my friend the other day, and she was talking about, you know, all the stuff that she's taken with her in this backpack, right? And as she's gone on the walk, she realized she doesn't need, you know, and I feel it's the same thing with emotions. You know, we've collected this stuff over years, over time, and we're carrying it with us. We're carrying it with us, whether we're aware of it or not. Actually, we're carrying it with us.
Yeah.
And once we start going, oh, I don't want, you've got the weight in the world of your shoulders, you know, I don't want this anymore. What can I have a little rummage in? What can I just discard?
Yeah.
And it just changes. It changes many, many things. You know, I've seen such transformational change in my own journey, you know, and you've spoken about, you know, a little bit about your background as well. And, you know, you wouldn't have been able to be where you are now if you hadn't done the work.
Sure.
And it can be called shadow work or, you know, whatever people sort of tend to call it. But there is a strength that is gleaned from leaning into that space. And I realized that if I can be with the deepest, darkest parts of myself, I can be that for others as well. Like nothing shocks me when I've been in my own mind and I've heard my own thoughts, which are really quite scary at times. It doesn't shock me what people say, actually, because I've seen the depths of my own pain, I suppose. Yeah.
Yeah. I believe that the therapists that can often be the most effective are the ones who have already walked that path, who have been to the very, very dark places. Because as you say, I started doing therapy with ex-Jehovah's Witnesses because I realized how much it had ruined me. It had messed me up so much. And I was aware that it had done that to anyone who's been in that fundamentalist religion or any fundamentalist religion or cult. And so when the clients would come to me, they would say, oh, I can talk to you, Gordon. I can tell you things and you understand me. And I would say, yes, because there's nothing that you're telling me that I haven't lived. Whereas they would often come and say, I spent some time, I had 3 sessions with a therapist. She didn't understand what I was talking about. She was just saying, well, no, that can't be the case. Whereas when I talk to you, you're going, all right, yes. Okay. Yeah. And so it's like, you know, the old story of you can't understand somebody until you've walked a mile in their moccasins or whatever. Yeah. It's the same if you've been there, but it's not just I've been there, but I found a way out. Then you know that it's possible. It gives you hope that everybody can find the way out. There is a route out of it. You don't be stuck there.
And hope goes a long way. You know, hope for change goes a long, long way. You know, the hope that one can change. And we all have the capacity to do that. We all have the capacity to choose how to live our lives.
Absolutely.
We've just forgotten.
Yeah. I mean, so you look at the 2 words, hopeful, hopeless.
Yeah.
You know, when you're hopeful, you're filled with it. It's, you know, it's going to drive you forward. When you hope less, well, if there's no hope, what? What's less? Same old, same old.
Many nuggets here, many nuggets, I feel. So let's just go through the practicalities of what, I mean, there is no typical session, right? I understand this because it just doesn't exist.
Sure.
But the rough journey that one can take through a hypnotherapeutic journey, what would that look like contextually for someone?
Okay, so there are some key things which with virtually every client I will go through these steps, because these are fundamental steps, in my opinion, in hypnosis. The very first thing I need to do is to do what I call the emotional pulse, which is to find out where the person is on an emotional level, not up here. And over time you become kind of attuned to where that person is by you ask them questions, and then you watch and you see what happens with the physical, not with the words. Quite often the words don't mean anything. People will tell you what they think they should tell you. But the emotional body will react in very strong ways when, you say, I want you to say, I love myself. So basic reactions. So you'll get somebody, I just want you to say this out loud and just feel how true it is, score it from 0 to 10 and go, I love myself, the eyebrows are up, the tone's down. I'm thinking, well, I don't even believe you. So, yeah. But, and sometimes people go, I love myself. And I truly believe them, but then sometimes people can't even say it. They can't even verbalize those words, or they'll burst into tears. And I think you don't need to give me a score on that one. I think we know where you are there. Yeah. So I'll do that, and I'll find out where they are. And quite often in those moments, people have tremendous light bulb moments because they come thinking that they're okay. Yeah. And one of the questions that really stands out that I get often these light bulb moments is when I say to them, just say this, I deserve a good life. And they'll say, I deserve a good life. Oh, I don't think I do. And imagine that as a program. Imagine going through your life believing that you don't deserve a good life. What kind of life are you going to manifest? Exactly the opposite. So that's the first step. The next step is we look at the most overarching negative feeling that the person carries with them in their life. What is it? What do you feel? And that you'll get many, many different things. And then in hypnosis, what we do is we follow that back, because I believe, and it's just my working philosophy. It mightn't be true, but it works nicely. Is that every belief, every negative emotion has a root. And so with hypnosis, the beautiful thing about it is you can go back and find the root of the problem. Why do we need to go to the root? Because if we use a metaphor of a weed, we can spend, and modern psychology and psychiatry does this. We can look at the weed and start pulling the leaves off it. Yeah. But we know, anyone who's a gardener knows you can pull the weed, but if you don't get the root out, it's coming back. And so with hypnosis, you can go and pull out the root of the weed. What does that mean? Then it starts to wither. You've taken the life out of it because you've taken away the initial issue. Does that mean that you can just leave the rest? No, you've got to do a cleanse of get rid of all of this stuff. But at least you've got the root. So that would be my first job in hypnosis. Then the second job would be what's called chair therapy. And that is, let's look at the relationships. Right. Who do the people that we have the worst relationships with, and the best ones? Our parents. We, as adults, we end up loving our parents and understanding what went on and why they did what they did. But there's a child there that doesn't. The child that was wounded, was hurt, didn't understand, because children don't understand. They don't know that adults are as rubbish as they are, or more so. they don't know that. They think adults know everything, they're perfect, and there should be this example. And when they get let down, it affects them deeply. So another process which is very powerful is getting people to let those emotions out. And really they come from the child. They come from the child, the wounded child. And I don't want to, I don't feel comfortable people talking very specifically about these parts. Well, the child and then the adult and then the teacher and all of that. We shouldn't be working to fracture ourselves. We should be working to create holistic, bring them all together. But at the beginning, people are often fractured, and especially, have a child partner. I tell you how you know that. Because you were asking about, how can you recognize when you've got a problem? When you react to something on a level that doesn't make sense, and the reaction that you have is like a child. So, screaming with anger, stamping your feet, smashing plates on the ground, running out of the house, crying. This is what children do. And so as an adult, if you see yourself reacting, it's always with a stimulus, it's a trigger that you get. Now everyone talks about being triggered. Oh, I was triggered. Bad. If you're triggered, you need to sort that out. So that's when you know that there's a wounded child there because you behave like a child. And you see men doing it, getting really angry and punching the wall. Adults don't do that. Children do. And so that's the second place, is to resolve the relationships that you had as a child that need to be resolved, and to forgive them. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Forgiveness. Yeah.
Sure. Forgiveness is the very important step in the process of loss. Forgiveness. After forgiveness, then paradise opens up. Before forgiveness, you're trapped.
100%. 100%. I might say a few things here which may be considered a bit triggering, but I find that, this current societal norm is to blame everybody else for our triggers. You can't say that, you're offending me. It's like, well, who's the one offended, actually? Because that's something that you might need to look at, or I need to look at. If I'm offended, I'll look at it, I'll own it, I'll take responsibility for that.
Yeah.
But, we're often adapting to try and, what I see is this potential to adapt to try and not trigger people. When actually I find the healing comes in the triggering if somebody's aware enough to do it. I had a chat with an interview with somebody the other day, a close sister of mine, and after we'd finished the thing, I just felt to say to her, I said, do you know what? I said, you've said this 3 times now. I said, that's something for you to look at. And her face was like, yeah, it really is, because it was just, for me, it felt like something was on loop.
Yeah.
And it was bringing a response. And I was like, I've just been guided to tell you this and to mirror this back to you. I'm going to leave it with you. But if I'd have said that in a different circle, it probably wouldn't have been responded to very well. I would have been the one that would have caused the issue. So in the right space, to be triggered, I find, is a gift, actually. It's like, oh, great, this is still at play in me. Let's have a look at this, figure it out. What's going on here? Not, oh, my God, the whole world needs to change in accordance with my trigger. And you can't say that because I find it offensive, which...
Absolutely. There's a beautiful expression, which is, don't try and carpet the whole world. Just put on a nice pair of slippers. When we catch ourselves saying, look what you did to me. Look how you made me feel. You make me angry. They are just lies that we're telling ourselves. When we can say, what you did made me feel, I felt something. I was responsible for creating this emotion inside. Yes, that was the trigger, but it wasn't you, it was me. And all it is, and going back to your comment about, I am offended by what you have done. It's the victim. Right? Now, we can go through our life being a victim. It's a shit life. It's horrible. It's a shit life. or we can go through our life being the victor. When you say, oh, I'm aware that I make myself angry when I see those things, you're the victor. When you're the victor, you can do something about it. When you're the victim, you can do nothing about it because it's all of them bastards. You know, and it's a sad, it's been sold as that's how we should think. And man, we're going to end up with a lot of people with a lot of mental problems because when you live in the victim mode, everything just goes from bad to worse. You end up achieving nothing in your life. The victors are the ones who achieve everything in their life. You know, the idea of there are two kinds of people. One kind of person falls down, scrapes the knees, gets back up, dusts themselves off, and they continue walking. Another person falls down, scrapes the knees, starts crying, blames everybody else, and stays on the ground. That's what the victim does. And so we as therapists, we've got a big job to do, which is to help people to move into that place of empowerment, sovereignty. And when people get there, that's when they're happy. Before they're unhappy. Happiness comes with sovereignty, with saying, I am responsible for every single thing I think and feel and do. That's freedom.
100%. Absolute truth right there. Whew, absolute. Because that's, you know, when people talk about manifestation and creating your reality, you know, often it's the material plane, you know, the cars and whatever it is they want to create this in their life. But actually, for me, the powerful part of our creator reality kicks in when we are aware that we are choosing to believe certain things, which then create that reality. Whether it's an unconscious choice or a conscious choice to believe, we are choosing that on some level. So the moment we can catch that and think, okay, well, I could experience it this way, or I could experience it this way, or how can I choose to feel about this or choose to experience this so that I get the best out of it, and therefore life transforms. You know,
I agree, and I would add to that the premise. These are not the truth; they're just truisms that you can have that are extremely practical in making your life better. If you decide and accept that everything that you have in your life at the moment, you have made, you have created. Once you accept that, then it puts you in a position of power, because when you think everything that I have, good and bad, I have created, that means that you can change it. If you think everything that I have bad in my life has been done to me, you can't change it. But, you know, so the power of being able to say, well, if I did it, I can undo it. That's power there, you know. So it exactly as you say, it's a reframe. It doesn't have anything to do with the truth. It's all about perception. It's just perception.
And the reframe, I'm glad you touched on that, because that's something that we do in hypnosis to help people understand that, yes, that could be a perception of their experience of that event that caused the program to run. But we're only limited in terms of how we see things. And especially as children, we have like a very black or white way of understanding. This person's doing this to me, therefore I must be bad because they're hurting me and they're not doing it to anybody else. Does that make sense? So it's like, once we understand in the hypnotherapeutic process, how can we reframe that? This person did that because they were suffering themselves, and it just so happened to be you that received. You know, it's not to say that what they went through, it's not to nullify their experience, because their experience was their experience, you know, and it shaped part of their conditioned and responses as to who they are and how they are today. But to understand that we take things so personally, these experiences, and we internalize things so personally. So if we can reframe it with a certain understanding, and I know from some of my work that when clients have processed their emotion and, you know, those feelings have shifted out and they've expressed them, they start to get understandings as to why their parent might have done that, or why this situation might have happened, or some further information comes through to say, this is why this happened. And it was to help you, support you to be this. This is why you can do this in this, like, you know, and it just helps a wider perspective, and also helps remove the victimhood mode, actually, because life happens for us.
Yeah.
I feel it's happening for us.
Yeah.
And through us. Yeah. So
yeah, I agree. The reframe, above all, when reframes are great when you've got the person malleable. You know, and that, you know, in hypnosis, as you say, reframes are brilliant toward the back end. You know, our friends do it naturally. Good friends. You say, oh my God, this has happened. And they go, hey, well, look on the bright side. That is what a reframe is. Look on the bright side. And to be able to say to somebody who's ready to hear it, even though what happened was unacceptable, even though what happened was not good, I'm going to suggest that it was the best thing that ever happened to you. Right. Can you imagine the unconscious mind at that point saying, what are you saying? I need to listen to this. How can this be the best thing that ever happened to me? And as long as you follow it up with, you've used it. Look what you learned. Look how strong it's made you as a person. Look what it's done to be able to reconfigure your life. Yeah. And that's what the power of a reframe is it's like you're going down a track and somebody then puts in another track and whoa, suddenly you see everything from a different way. Nothing's changed about the experience except what you've learned from it. And it gives you power. Then a negative experience gives you power again. So, yeah, I know why that happened. I think, Joules, I don't know what you think, understanding now what life is all about, the bad stuff that happens to us for the best of reasons. It's the bad stuff that makes us the strong person that we are. The good stuff is just a treat while we're waiting for the next lot of bad stuff to come. It's just like a little bit of, you know, we'll give you, just take a breather, a breather until the next lesson comes. When you look at life like that, like, oh my God, there's a lesson coming, not something bad's coming. What have I got to learn from this? Great, here's another opportunity. You know, that reframing a problem. This is not a problem. This is an opportunity. Right. And I know it's cliche, but that is the key. This isn't a problem. This is an opportunity for me to learn to become a better person. How much am I going to improve myself when I get through this?
What springs to mind when you were talking is a cake. Like the bad stuff is a cake. So that kind of fills us up for a bit and it, you know, sort of nourishes us. It depends on the cake, I guess. But the good stuff is the icing on the cake. It makes the cake taste sweeter.
Exactly. And it gives you a chance to, you know, kick back and have a tequila or whatever, you know, and think, woo, that, you know, it's like,
let that one digest for a bit.
Exactly. When you've done some, you know, you've just run a marathon and at the end you're going to have a drink and I think, you know, the marathon's where you learn, your body learned, you know.
Sure. Which is why people say it's not about the destination, it's the journey, right? You can always strive to get to this point, but, you know, what are you missing on the way? And actually, it's the journey where you learn everything that you need to learn to be able to enjoy the destination.
Absolutely. There's a beautiful metaphor I heard about you know, unfortunately, and it's not good, but life is like all of these people are on a coach traveling through the most beautiful countryside they've ever seen. All the blinds are down and everybody's inside arguing about who should have the best seat on the coach. You know, our job is to forget about the silly details, lift the blinds up and have a look, see where we're going.
Beautiful, beautiful. Wow, Gordon, is there anything else you feel to mention at this point? Or should we leave people with the understanding that they can roll up the blinds and look at the view?
Absolutely. Even if the view's not very nice at the moment, still get the bloody blinds rolled up.
Let that light in.
Have a look. You know, you'll never know until you look. Yeah. So I think we've covered a lot and loads of lovely information. And thank you so much for the excellent questions as well, Julie. You're a brilliant facilitator. Just my advice is, our life is not about being static. even when we think we've arrived, you haven't arrived. We have not arrived. This is an ongoing journey, and it ends in this life when we leave this one, and then it continues elsewhere. So it's never over. Never think that, well, there's no point in doing any more because, hey, I'm okay. Keep working on yourself. We are a work in progress, and you know, it's going to be different work as you go along, but definitely it's worth doing. It's why we're here. It's our purpose.
Wow, what great advice, for sure, for sure. Thank you so much for taking the time to jump on the call. And as ever, it's just a pleasure to chat life, the cosmos and the universe and all the other things that come in between that.
Exactly, yeah.
So
yeah.
Thanks very much. What I will do is make sure that your contact details are put in the description, so that if people want to reach out to you and get in contact with you about, you know, what you're involved in, they can do that really easily. So I will make sure that's the case. Yeah. And so thanks very much.
Joules, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.